I've wanted to talk about this concept for a long while now, and I figure there's no better time than Pride Month to do so. And before you wonder, no, I'm not coming out. And in fact, that leads perfectly into the subject of this video. Hey everyone, my name is Christian Verstappen, and I have a lot to say about many things. I want to talk about my experience dealing with homophobia as a cis het man. What do I mean by that? What type of homophobia could I have possibly experienced? Well, very simply, it was people thinking and, when I corrected them, insisting that I was gay. Now, I want to be super clear about this. There is nothing wrong with being gay or bi or trans or non-binary or whatever you identify as. What is an issue, though, is people assuming that you are something you aren't. I'm sure many of you have experienced this regardless of, but I'm sure many people who are actually, part of the LGBTQ community have experienced this themselves. You know how a lot of people will say things like, "Oh, it's just a phase," or "How do you know?" or all those different things, right? Oh, well, you're not actually, you're not actually gay, you're not actually trans, whatever it is. I unironically experienced that as a straight person. No one ever questioned my gender, and I've never questioned my gender. I've never questioned my sexuality or anything like that either. But other people definitely have, and they had no qualms about sharing that. Ultimately, this is all based on stereotypes. My head voice, when I, speak in a higher register, I can understand when looking at stereotypes why people would think that I was gay. But when I would, it's one of the reasons, by the way, that I intentionally try to speak from my diaphragm and speak from a lower register like this. Whereas my head voice is kind of more up here, and I would kind of sound like this a lot of the time when I was talking, especially like in high school and stuff, and shortly after. But I more intentionally try to speak in a lower register to push that off, so to speak. You see, when I would ask people, like, no, I would say, like, no, I'm not gay. What makes you think that? Or if they would ask, are you sure? They'd ask, are you sure? Or, oh, well, you must at least be bi then. I'm like, no, I'm not. Sorry, I like women. I don't know what to say. Well, at that time when I was in high school, it was, I like girls, but women too. And now, just women. You get the idea. What I would ask them, though, like, what makes you think I was gay? And they'd say things like, well, it's your mannerisms, it's the way you talk, it's, you're very well groomed, the way you dress, like all these different things. And I'm just like, okay, so because I'm not dressing like a slob, because I like actually have some semblance of like style and stuff to myself, and because I, like take pride in my appearance and stuff, and the way that I speak or whatever, you think I'm gay. Like, it was insane to me. And, to an extent, you know, having grown up with that and trying to kind of, I guess, push off that idea people might have of me, there is a level of performative, no, I don't even want to say that. It's just like, I do make more of an effort to be open about my attraction toward women. It's why I did that whole video of pointing out all the hot chicks in the at the Game Awards, both in the games and on stage, which was, of course, not just it was also to kind of go against the narrative of like, oh, there's no hot women in games anymore. It's like, what are you talking? Like, they're everywhere. What are you talking about? Anyway, um, and it was a lot of fun to just do that. Um, sorry, I'm saying a lot, but I was told, oh well, the way that you act, the way that you talk about women, all these different things. I I I struggled a lot with um, shame and guilt for the attraction to women that I had that was very much rooted in purity culture. I've talked about this before, but my mother growing up was very much a prude, and she pushed that onto me. I never became prudish, but I felt very guilty of the desires that I had toward women. And I dealt a lot with the shame and guilt of that, as well as the fact that by the time I hit, like, I don't know, 15 or 16, I had started watching porn frequently. Um, Also, something that I try to be pretty open about, as well as like, just being open about like liking media with hot women in general, and stuff like that, because I didn't really I didn't allow myself to really experience those things growing up. So, I dealt with a lot of this, yeah, these like this label that was put on me that kind of followed me around and still follows me around to an extent. Even in like one of the videos that I did, and I briefly touched on this in another one too, but I get people that are like, oh, you know, look at your background, like, guys obviously gay or virtue signaling or whatever. No, I just like the aesthetic. I like the multicolored aesthetic, and I don't know. I liked the rainbow aesthetic, even like especially on like black with like a rainbow aesthetic or a splash of color, different random colors or whatever. I liked that aesthetic even back when I was like religious and homophobic. And on that note, yeah, I was raised pretty religious, and my stance was basically that like, well, I don't personally have an issue with like gay people or whatever, but I do think that it's a sin. Now having deconstructed all that, I don't think it's a sin or anything like that. I don't think sin is a real thing in general, mind you. But I think, of course, people who are of any type of, you know, LGBTQ plus community, you're all valid. You're all fine. you know. Um, but I think what ended up happening, what I experienced was people trying to be so like accepting and kind of like, I guess, prove they were more woke or progressive or whatever by being accepting of, and I guess helping me come out of the closet or something. There was no closet to come out of. I just wasn't and am not gay. I don't know, like women. And I know that there are other guys that have dealt with this too. I know the YouTuber Jax Films gets these kind of things all the time. My heroes growing up, like, I've always been a little more effeminate, and have always my heroes have been people that were kind of more on that level as well. And I understand where this notion came from. Again, when looking at stereotypes, but when looking at reality, no. And I guess my ultimate message to this is, for one, for anybody that if you're a guy or whatever you are for that matter, and people are assuming your gender or sexuality, and what they're assuming, what they're even insisting is different than what you actually are. First of all, you don't have to take it. You can try to politely explain to them that you aren't whatever they are insisting you are. And at the same time, understand that these people are basing all of this just on stereotypes. So in my case, I have made more of an effort in general, not just because of that, but just in general to become, more masculine presenting. And it's funny because in my case, I started doing all that after I became more left leaning. So this notion where people are like, "Oh, like the left hates men" or whatever, it's like, I don't know, dude. I've wanted to become more masculine and have been on that journey since I moved to the left. So I have no idea what you're on about. But yeah, just don't assume what other people are, and if somebody does assume, all you can do is politely try to explain and understand that it really is just coming from a place of stereotypes. You can try to, you know, um, exude certain standards that they might have for that align with how you want to be perceived, right? And I think this is something that trans people understand very well. If you want to be perceived as trans, you know, you want to be more passing, generally speaking. That said, of course, if somebody is, trans, you should respect that, even if they aren't passing in your eyes or whatever. It's like, okay, you know, we're all on our own, journey and everything. And on that note, I've talked about this before too, but like there are cis women that don't even pass as like they could get clocked as a trans woman. Um, and on that note, funnily enough, I've even been misgendered before, where I happened to me twice. I remember one time I was going from what was it? Well, one time I was like 10 or something, and I was in Sam's Club with my parents. It was a very simple thing, but my dad and I got these like samples from the sample guy, and they just told me, like, as I was leaving, they were like, "Have a good day, ma'am." Like, ma'am. And I think my dad corrected him. I'm not entirely sure. But, and then another time, I was walking into a store, something with the Walmart Sam's Club connection. I don't know, man. I was walking into Walmart, and the greeter referred to me as a miss. And I was like, I'm a guy. And like, I had longer hair at the time, and I had man titties and stuff like. I mean, I still have man titties, but I'm working on it. But come on, man. Like, I don't. It felt wrong. It was like, that's not what, like that's. And just even just those two experiences of that, and all the experiences that I've had of people assuming or insisting that I was gay or bi or whatever, anything other than straight. Those examples live in my mind rent free, and I think help me to understand in a lot of ways what people of the LGBTQ community go through. And I just can't imagine making, especially intentionally, making someone feel the way that I've been made to feel accidentally. I can't. I mean, it makes you feel some kind of way. It calls into question. It makes you think like, oh shit, am I not? What standards am I not meeting that you think I'm different than what I want, than what I'm trying to present as? What standards am I not living up to here? And it hurts. It does. It hurts people just assuming, or in my case again, insisting that you are something you aren't. So I don't know. I just There are, of course, things you can do to try and align more with what people generally perceive as that. And I've tried to do that to an extent. Although, as with anything, if you're trying to, change things about yourself, do so in a way that still is true to who you are. You don't want to go too far in a direction that you're not even who you want to be. So I don't know. As far as though people who, you know, in general, if you see someone and they to you fit some kind of stereotype, maybe it's the way they talk or dress or whatever it might be, and you think, oh, they're gay, they might not be. You don't know. Or you think, oh, they're straight, they might not be. You don't know. You don't know what anybody's gender or sexuality is unless you ask them. And the only time it matters is if you're hitting on them and you're planning on having a relationship with them that involves their gender and or sexual identity. But most of the time, like as far as pronouns and stuff go, people will tell you and you can just respect that. But don't assume what people are. Even if you think you're being progressive or whatever, and assuming that somebody's part of the LGBTQ community when we're not. And don't assume that somebody who might look very straight or, they're passing so much that you would never think that they're trans. Don't assume that they're. I mean, okay, I say that. I guess in a way, maybe you should kind of assume like a trans person is cis, because like that is like a really good compliment. I feel like to a lot of trans people, they're like, "Oh my god, like I'm so passing. You had no idea, like you had no idea at all. That's incredible." So, but I don't know. That's not an experience that I've lived, and I've never heard one way or the other. That's just kind of a thought that I had. But yeah, I don't know. Just you know, be kind to each other. Be respectful, and you know, be understanding of what people tell you that they are, regardless of what that is. And if it doesn't align with your preconceived notions, then oh well, they're not who you thought they were. Sorry, like it is what it is. But as always, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Follow me on social media for more. Subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like. And if not, I hope you find something you do like. Happy Pride, guys. Stay safe out there and take care of each other out there. Peace and love.